Hello, everybody, and welcome to part two of understanding the microbiome as it pertains to your mental, emotional, and spiritual health. My name is Andrea Jones, registered nurse and functional hormone practitioner. I work with children and adults in optimizing their health. And one of my favorite ways to optimize someone's health is actually by assessing the health of their microbiome and getting that fine-tuned to address specific issues. So if you have not already, make sure to go back and listen to part one, where I talk about what the microbiome is, why it impacts our mental and emotional health, and really just helping you to understand those pieces before we actually dive into the testing. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit like and subscribe to get updates on all of my trainings and how those might benefit you. So let's dive right in. These are really common questions that people submit to me all the time, whether that be an email or on Instagram or just in person. And I wanted to share that with a wider audience to help you gain some understanding on what your symptoms mean, but also what tools are available to you. So let's dive into those questions. Let's see here. So, how can microbiome testing help in identifying and addressing mental health or behavioral issues? So, this is such a good question. And I actually want to start by sharing with you some of the pitfalls of conventional microbiome testing, how I kind of discovered that, some trial and error that was mixed within there before I share with you the testing that I use both personally and in my practice. So, when we talk about conventional microbiome testing, typically what that means is a stool sample that is looking for. Um, Blood, meaning that there's blood in the stool, and so they're looking for some other disease process that's happening. Um, Parasites, bacteria, viruses, etc. And they're really looking for like the big guys that cause really big problems so that they can typically prescribe you antibiotics or antiviral medication. I will say in my own personal experience, personally for myself and also for one of my children, and also for a lot of the people that end up coming to me for microbiome testing, those tests typically come up as inconclusive or like AKA you're normal, everything's fine. And part of this really has to do with just that the samples are not sensitive enough. The testing is actually not sensitive enough to look deep enough at what's actually going on and what we really need to see. So I typically advise people not to waste their money on a test like that because it's not actually going to be showing you what you hope that it's going to show you, especially when it comes to symptoms like constipation, diarrhea, mood swings, bloating, fatigue, anxiety, etc. Um, just it's not going to show you that. I ended up opting to start that at that place mainly because our insurance covered it, and I was like, well, I'm kind of curious what it will show, and it ended up showing nothing, and it still ended up costing us about $350 after insurance. Even though we have really good insurance, I still don't know why that is, but that's besides the point. And then I decided, like, but we're still having these symptoms. So, like, there's got to be something we're missing, which is when I decided to look more into functional microbiome testing. So, functional microbiome testing is looking at the overall function of the digestive tract as well as the function of your microbiome ecosystem. So, do you have the right ratio of bacteria, good and bad bacteria? Do you have it in the right places? Is it doing the right things? Do you have issues with your stomach acid that's that's creating difficulty breaking down proteins? Are you making enough enzymes? Is your gallbladder functioning appropriately? That is a functional microbiome analysis, okay? And so there is a very big difference between that kind of testing, functional medicine testing, and just a standard conventional comprehensive stool analysis. So when it comes to understanding how can microbiome testing help with identifying behavioral and mental health issues, we first have to understand that there are limitations to conventional medicine testing. And so if you've done that before and you've gone that route and you're like, I haven't gotten any answers, it's the testing is not sensitive enough and it's also not looking for what you're hoping it will show you. So I am speaking specifically of, I use the Biome FX through Microbiome Labs. I work directly with the naturopaths at the lab for every single analysis that we do. And it's a 20-page report as opposed to a one-page normal, not normal that you would get from a standard stool analysis from your lab through your conventional doctor. So those are two very different things. When it comes down to how can microbiome testing help in identifying and addressing mental health or behavioral issues? Okay, this is where it gets really, really cool. And I'm going to try and do a separate video, probably part 3, where I actually show you what we see on those analysis. But what we are looking for, number one, when it comes to mental health and behavioral challenges is this person making the right bacteria, the right good bacteria, the beneficial bacteria that are keeping all of the bad bacteria where they need to be? Is this good bacteria behaving normally? If it's behaving normally, it's going to produce ample amounts of serotonin. It's going to produce and regulate dopamine. It's going to help regulate cortisol. It's going to help regulate your progesterone if you're a female, your testosterone if you're a male. And all of those hormones and neurotransmitters impact our behavioral health. And if you haven't taken a chance to listen to part 1, I talk a little bit more about what specifics can cause behavioral and mood changes in adults and children. So you're going to want to go back and look at that. So we're not just looking at, page 3 on the testing that says, hey, there are these really nasty pathogenic bugs called E. coli and C. diff that we know are really neurotoxic. Yes, we're looking for those, but that's like 1/3000th of what we actually look for on those tests. So we're not just looking at, does this person have pathogenic bugs that are creating some sort of neuroexcitability or depleting all of the healthy neurotransmitters? Do they have that? But also, do they have all of the good beneficial bacteria that's keeping all the bad guys in check? Do they have normal motility? Believe it or not, having regular normal bowel movements is actually a very, very, very strong indicator of how healthy your microbiome is. So if you have a child that's struggling with constipation or diarrhea or a mix of both, that is a good indicator that there is some increased risk for mood and behavior changes as they get older, because our motility should be regular, normal, soft, and formed bowel movements daily. Okay. So I hope that answered that question. Number 7, what are the limitations or potential challenges of microbiome testing in the context of mental health? So I already kind of shared with you some of the limitations of conventional medicine. Some of the limitations when it comes to like the BiomeFX stool sample that we use, the testing that I use, some of the limitations with that truly just come down to what I have observed as it comes down to the practitioner's interpretation of results, which is why I have chosen to stay being mentored by the lab and by the naturopaths at the lab so that we can look at all of the different facets of somebody's picture. One of the other limitations that I've seen, especially when it comes to how you interpret the results, is that you also have to give equal weight to the patient's symptoms. So we can't just look at the test and be like, well, they're having all these symptoms of SIBO, but their hydrogen's not that high, their sulfate's not that high, their butyrate's not that high. So like maybe it's fine. You have to have a practitioner that's willing to weigh the patient's symptoms as equally as the test results themselves. So when it comes to limitations, you really want to ask some really good questions of the person that you are going to be getting your testing from. And I'm happy to share some of those questions with you. These are questions I would ask anybody that was running an analysis for me, okay? Um, how long have you been interpreting tests? What is your methodology or your Methodology is probably a good way to look at it. How are you, like, do you have other people that are helping you to understand these lab results with you? Um, what can we expect as far as a timeline of recovery? That's a really good one because what I would share with somebody who has SIBO, that may be taking, for them, my timeline would look more like 6 months for recovery than somebody who doesn't have SIBO, who maybe is just recovering from some gastroenteritis that's caused some mood issues. That's more of like 4 to 6 weeks of a process. So the question you want to ask is, what should I expect as far as a recovery time? What should I expect as far as follow-up visits? And do you, as the practitioner, recommend dietary changes as well? Because any practitioner that is solely prescribing supplements and is not also looking at dietary and lifestyle changes is doing you a disservice, because remember, a huge part of our microbiome is reliant upon our nervous system, meaning how are we managing stress? And stress comes in all kinds of different forms. It's not just emotional stress, it's also dietary stress, right? And so those are some questions that I would ask when you're trying to determine, is this a person that I should work with for microbiome testing, because their expertise level and their scope of practice could also be a limitation for that. um, Let's see here. Can you share any recent research or findings that highlight the connection between the microbiome and mental health? Yes, and I'm happy to also put that in the show notes. But we know that about 70 to 80% of your neurotransmitters are made in the digestive tract, and this is consistent data over the last 10 years that has not changed. We also know that if somebody takes an SSRI, so like an anti-anxiety or antidepressant medication, they have improved results when they are also addressing their microbiome, meaning that supporting the microbiome, getting the neurotransmitters optimized through the gut actually improves um, it improves the medication. We also see this with alternative treatments like neurofeedback, that neurofeedback treatments are improved, meaning their progress is improved when their microbiome is improved as well. And we also know that supporting the microbiome improves the immune system in the entire body, which reduces inflammation, which reduces that irritation at the neurotransmitter level. Some smaller statistics, just sharing, like, this wouldn't even be considered like a legitimate study, but I will just share in my own practice. Over the last 2 years, every single microbiome analysis I've done, um, every single client has been missing the essential strains that they need to produce serotonin. So all of these clients that are coming in with, I feel moody, I feel low, I feel depressed, they don't even have the bacteria in their gut to produce serotonin. So we have to address that. And that's 100%. 100% of those clients, I think it's 12 or 13 out of just the last year, that did not have those essential nutrients that they needed to support a balanced mental state and a balanced microbiome. Question number 9. I actually really like this question. What practical steps can individuals take to improve their microbiome health, and how might these steps impact their mental well-being? So, oh gosh, I feel like I'll try to keep it very succinct. Number 1, manage your nervous system, meaning take care of yourself, get adequate rest, make sure you're moving your body. Sedentary lifestyles are horrible for our microbiome. We know that just walking 30 minutes a day can actually improve akromansia, which is a blood sugar regulator. It's an insulin regulator. It's a GLP-1 activator, which means that it helps to improve insulin sensitivity to encourage weight loss. We also know that Akkermansia helps to protect against leaky gut. So something as simple as walking for 30 minutes a day can significantly impact your microbiome. Eating a wide variety of foods with as minimal restriction as possible. Unless obviously if you have food allergies, that's something that you're going to want to work on. But eating a wide variety of whole foods, organic if possible, just because glyphosate is extremely irritating to the gut, and we want to minimize that where at all possible. Um, and then, of course, if you're struggling with symptoms, if you're having gut and mood issues, if you're having any of the symptoms I described in video one, or you take the assessment below, and you're having symptoms there, getting a comprehensive microbiome analysis can save you not only time, but money, frustration in your healing process, and get you feeling significantly better in a very short period of time. Let's see here. How can healthcare providers integrate microbiome testing into their practice to better support patients with behavioral and mental health concerns? It's actually fairly easy to do, and it's one of the things I started doing actually kind of out of necessity. I needed to get some microbiome testing, and so I communicated with the State Board of Nursing, found out that that was obviously within my scope of practice to do, and started immediately working with the lab directly, first for myself and then for my patients, and then just continued to receive ongoing mentoring, education, and support. So it absolutely is a tool that you can use in your tool belt. And if your practitioner doesn't do that, or you're not happy with your results, meaning your progress so far, it could be that the level of support that they are providing you is too small for what you need. So I've seen this occasionally with other practitioners who have a different scope of practice, meaning, as a registered nurse, we are trained from day one to look at a patient through a very specific lens, meaning we're looking at them from a mind, body, spirit perspective at all times. And so we also have extensive knowledge in anatomy, physiology, neuroanatomy, and so we have a very wide range of education and expertise. And so that provides a different level of value to patients and clients than maybe a health coach that doesn't have that training, but is certified as a health coach with no other educational background, like no other educational medical background. So it could be that if you're stuck and you're not getting the results that you're looking for, that the practitioner you're working with just has too small of a scope of practice to actually address the areas that you need to be addressed. So if this is of benefit to you, if you have found this helpful, if you have questions for me, don't hesitate to shoot me an email, Andrea@abundantwellnesswithandrea.com, DM me on Instagram, or you can click the link to order your microbiome test today. Thanks so much for watching.